Good evening and what is up, Razorback Nation? We are back for episode 69 of Hogs on the Hill. You go to podcast for an in-depth dive in all things Arkansas Razorbacks. We're brought to you by our friends over at Razor Pigs. Looking good never felt so fun. Razor Pigs is the Arkansas-born brand, bringing some serious style to the golf course, tailgate, and everywhere in between. From high-quality polos to head-turning hats, they've got what you need to rep the natural state with pride. Founded right here at home and now run by a Razorback-loving family, Razor Pigs is where comfort meets cool, so go hog wild and shop Razor Pigs today at razorpigs.us. And our lovely friends over at Scarlet Letter, Arkansas's very own handcrafted spiked seltzer. You can check them out today. And if you are in Northwest Arkansas, you can check out the Core Brewery Tap Room, where you can get Scarlet Letter and all its various flavors on tap, as well as their newest and latest hard iced teas. So Thursday afternoon, it's game week. Arkansas back at home. Petrino's first game back in Fayetteville as the head hog interim, as we know. But how you feeling, Austin?
Bro, I'm still I still haven't wrapped my whole head around Bobby Petrino coming back into Arkansas as the head coach. I think that is insane. And then for pretty much the last time the Texas A&M played in Fayetteville was when Bobby was the head coach, or right around there. So it's kind of like a whole full circle moment on top of another full circle moment. As far as the game itself, I'm not too sure. Like I said last week, I think Tennessee's a better team than Texas A&M, but I think Texas A&M is a harder challenge for Arkansas. So we'll just have to see how it goes, and hopefully they kick butt on Saturday.
Right. So we got a load of show for you tonight, guys. That we're going to talk about Petrino's press conference this week. SEC Media Days for Arkansas basketball this week, as Arkansas basketball is right around the corner. You have exhibition play next Friday, as well as a big portion of the show tonight. We are going to have Peyton Dunn from the Pigpen Collective joining us tonight to talk about the newest Arkansas fan-driven collective that is up and running and working on trying to, with the dissolving of Arkansas Edge, there needs to be something in place, and this is the latest out there. So we're going to welcome Peyton Dunn to the show, the founder of Pigpen Collective. Peyton, how's it going tonight?
It's going pretty good. How about you guys?
Pretty good, man.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Not a problem. So we'll start with first. So we know you founded Pigpen Collective, but to kind of tell the people a little bit more about what do you do, what's your day job, and then also what helped you come up with this idea of, hey, let me start this collective so I can kind of help Arkansas get with the program, if you will.
Yeah, so a little bit on my background. I recently just did a 2-year stint on active duty. I've been with the Guard for the last 6 years. So now I'm going back to the Guard, so working on the civilian side of things. Kind of want to keep that a little bit more private, exactly where I work, just in case they watch this. That way they don't fire me if they don't like something I say or get an idea. So so that's a little bit about me. I went to Harding University, born and raised in Arkansas. I've been a Hog fan all my life. Small town of Bradford, Arkansas. I always got to give the shout out there. But where this idea came from was really after the Memphis game. I was in town. I think Fox 16 used part of the interview where I talked about that. But we went to Bill Street, and the people at Bill Street were like, hey, you need some extra tissues or extra napkins for your tears. And I'm like, oh my God. But I almost got in a fight leaving the game because people were pushing and shoving, yelling. It was terrible. I never want to go to Memphis again after that. But the idea just came to me. I was like, I looked at what the Grove had. I've heard a lot of things about the Grove. And I was like, why don't we structure something like that? And then if the university kind of, at the time, the university still had an NIL collective, and then a couple of days later it dissolved. So I was like, okay, we could use that one to be the corporate, hey, Walmart, Tyson, you go through them, get your tax write-off, and we'll be for the everyday fan. That way everybody can pitch something in and feel like they're contributing to the program.
Yeah, man. So I guess I'll go on the kind of the Arkansas edge thing. So we kind of talked about a little bit before we got on here about how who you've talked to. And I just kind of want to know I know that you talked to the U of A with the compliance office and everything, but who exactly have you talked to? If you talked to the big guys like Hunter Yurchek, or have you talked to any like major boosters? I know you said something about like this being an everyday fan thing, but sometimes those big boosters can help a little bit.
Yeah, I've definitely been trying to get in contact with the big boosters. Most big boosters, you kind of have to go through a couple paywalls or people first. So I have people reaching out to some people for me. We have some stuff going on, that I can't really talk about because I don't want to bring it to public light and then it not happen or call it out before it's official. So definitely stuff's brewing there. With the university, Dan Trump was who I talked to at the compliance office. Great guy, took the time to talk to me, sent me over some needed materials to make sure we go by all the standards when we are doing a contract. And then I actually got a cease and desist letter today from the university. So I've talked to that part of the university today, but a lot of good did come out of it. That's why you've seen my logo change on everything today, and the website's kind of different. I'm going to have to take some time to edit it a little bit more and make it more our style and not the university style. But through that, we now I had a response finally from the front office to my email chain, and we're working right now to set up a meeting so I could talk to the general manager and everybody that actually controls NIL. I have not reached out to Hunter Yurchek. That's a great idea. I'll consider it. But I was trying to keep it he's got a lot going on with the coaching search and everything. I'm trying to use the actual funnels of people that are supposed to do that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So thinking about, that, and, thinking about, like you mentioned, the Grove, another one of the fan or booster type collectives out there. And so, fan or booster collectives, it may be a new thing for Arkansas, but, as we've established, it's not a novel idea in terms of other schools have it. We just don't. Have you talked to any of those other fan or booster led collectives to kind of gain any pointers or get any tips from them on, kind of what they did to get started and, that type of thing?
So I've sent an Indeed connect to the guy who runs the Grove, and I've followed him on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm just basically waiting for him to react to that. But I always look at it from the perspective of, why would Ole Miss help us figure this out? Because now we can compete with them. So it's like, I didn't really have that idea. Someone gave me the idea. So I was like, okay, we'll try it. Because I was just in the perspective, why? If I seen Ole Miss struggling, I'd be like, no, y'all keep struggling so we can keep beating y'all and everything. But that's how much I don't like them. I don't know how much they dislike us. So.
No, I got you. So along those lines, at Texas Tech, you've got Cody Campbell, who Texas, billionaire. He's created probably one of the best fan/booster led NIL collectives in the country. And then 1 year after they really started hitting the portal, they're number 7 in the country. They're 6-0. They don't really have another hard team except probably BYU upcoming. They're probably going to win that. And even if they lose the Big 12 championship, they're likely going to be in the college football playoffs. With, it coming from, a ground roots operation and, not having that billionaire money, do you ever think that this collective could ever get to the point where it competes with those oil tycoons like Campbell?
I think the money's there for Arkansas. I think we could easily, just crunching numbers, right? I think we could easily hit over $10 million a year, at least out of this collective. And then again, Tyson, Walmart, JB Hunt, all the big boosters that need the tax write-off can go through the university channels to get those tax write-offs. So overall combined, we could grow to beat – we should be able to beat Texas Tech. I don't know if anyone's been to Lubbock, but there ain't much there. No one wants to go to Lubbock. We have an entire state and they have a town. So we just have to get state pride back and, show people what's up.
Yeah, 100%. And that's things. It's like you see in these other schools do that and having that much success. When Arkansas is the premier program in the state, you don't have another like Mississippi State and Ole Miss type of thing. Or in case of Texas, you've got A&M, Texas, Houston, Texas Tech, all the high level universities. So yeah, you'd think with University of Arkansas being the premier one big program in the university, that it would be much easier to get that accomplished. But thinking about it, the saying once bitten, twice shy. So Hog fans have been bitten twice now with Arkansas Edge and all the issues that it's had, understandably so. So now they're looking at Pigpen Collective with maybe some caution, wanting to really know more about it. So what makes you and Pigpen Collective a little bit different? And then kind of why should they trust you as the next fan collective that will actually work?
So I have like kind of 2 points on that. I completely understand why people don't trust it. I am a fan too. I was with the first 2 things and now we're on the third one, right? So I get it. I don't blame people. Whenever people go on Twitter and say, or X now, and say negative things, like I've been that fan before. I totally get it. But I know that trust isn't built in a day. Like once we've signed that first athlete, people will be able to trust us to warm up to us once we get some boosters to go along with it. I think it's just going to take time. Like this isn't going to happen overnight. So that'd be like what I say to not trusting us. But, the other part of that is, would I trust the university to come out with something new? Like they've screwed up twice. Like, do we want the suits that aren't from Arkansas to run it? Do we want these people that we don't know? Like I can share all the information of where all the money's going and I can be as transparent as possible. And guess what? You know my name. You know where I live pretty much. Like, everything about me. You can come find me, right? I mean, try to contact Hunter Yurchek or the front office. I'm already having problems with it, and they have a reason to talk to me. What reason do they have to talk to a normal fan? Like I'm trying to be as transparent with people as possible, and that's going to be my number one goal. And that'd be my proposition is like, do you trust whatever they're going to make, or should we back this up so that way they go along with it too?
Yeah, man. So I guess let's just go back. You said you're from Harding. Or you went to Harding, right? And you're from, say one more time, the city.
Bradford, Arkansas. It's outside of Searcy. It's a small school.
Yeah. I figured you were around Searcy since you went to Harding. There's only a few people I know that go to Harding that are not like Church of Christ people outside of the Searcy area. So that's what I figured. But so I kind of want to like loosen things up a little bit more now that we kind of got all that other stuff. Tell me about like growing up, being a Hog fan, and like what's your, I guess, favorite moment like growing up and living this roller coaster we call Arkansas fandom.
Right. I mean, I didn't have the best home life growing up, I'm not gonna lie. And every Saturday I got to wake up and look forward to a Razorback game. Like I did get the Bobby Petrino era the first time, so that was pretty nice. But I grew up in an Arkansas where if you wanted to be president, you grew up and you could see Bill Clinton, a guy from Hope, Arkansas, could be president. If you wanted to marry the biggest movie star, you had Billy Bob Thornton marrying Angelina Jolie. If you wanted to be the best country music artist, there was Johnny Cash. And then if you wanted to be the best entrepreneur, you had Tyson and you had Walmart. So anything was possible growing up in Arkansas. So that's probably where I get the deep fandom. My first game growing up, we didn't have a lot of money to do stuff like that. I was a single mom household. But my grandpa took me up to a game in Little Rock, and I got to see Bobby Portis play his freshman year. And then I finally got to go up to Fayetteville. They'd take me up to basketball camp over the summer. I made a pretty good relationship with Coach Z over the years. I went like all 4 years of high school up there. I thought I could play college basketball, but you can't beat 5'9" in white. So I did, however, get a scholarship to go to Lyon College to play track and cross country. That's what I did my freshman year. COVID happened, season's over. I switched over to Harding because I was in ROTC at that point. And line, it just didn't work out there. One of my coaches left, and I'm not going to go into too much details on that. But anyway, that's why I went to Harding. I'm Southern Baptist here, it's not COC, but I still love my Harding folks. So,
yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah. So you mentioned it earlier, and the question is, from your perspective, what do you think it will take to get, you mentioned earlier, the quote unquote state pride back, for these Arkansas fans? I know part of it is you've got to start winning and, fixing some of these, it seems like, ironically weird situations that happens for Arkansas. But, for you and at Pigpen Collective, like, what do you think it will take to get state pride back in Arkansas? So
I'm a political science major, so I could go into the deeper roots of what I think caused state pride to leave. And it's going to take time. It's like this generation's priority cooked for it, to be honest. Because when I was growing up, no one talked about Arkansas bad. Like if I seen someone dog in Arkansas, like me and them, we're gonna throw hands. And nowadays, it's Arkansas people talk about Arkansas sucking. Someone moves out of Arkansas and they say, "What's the best thing to do in Arkansas?" They say, "Well, move out, pack your crap up, and leave." Like that was not a thing when I was growing up, and now it's a thing. And I'm gonna show the best state pride possible. I'm going to represent it how it used to be. And I'm going to hope people, will join the cause, join the movement, see my passion, see the rest of the fans' passion. And hopefully we can believe that we can win a national championship. I mean, a guy from Hope, Arkansas was president. I think a national championship is pretty attainable. It's been done before. And if once we have that belief that Arkansas can truly be great, and I mean, everybody up on the Hill has to believe that, then we can be great. I think it's where it's got to start. You got to have everybody up there believing it. Because if you're not up there believing it, why are you there? Like, what is your job?
Gotcha, man. Well, you definitely inspire a lot of hope. I can't say that I am always like that. I'm not fickle, right? I love the Hogs. I'm always going to love the Hogs. I'm loyal to a fault. But from just talking to you, I mean, you sound like you legitimately believe in the Hogs. And, I guess, does that like follow you around in your whole life, or is that just, kind of the state pride thing, or is that just like your whole motto? And are you going to take that into this, venture with the Pigpen Collective?
I feel like it's got to be part of it. You just got to be like very energetic about it. I mean, when I was in Bullock for the Army, so Bullock's the basic officer leadership course, I was, a National Guard guy out of Arkansas, and that's what they literally call me. Oh, Arkansas, because I always talked about it. So it's something that's definitely going to stick with me. I've always kind of been identified as that guy from Arkansas because I won't shut up about Arkansas. I got a tattoo of it. So like
the state or the word?
I got the state.
Okay.
It's got the coordinates of Bradford, Arkansas on it. So it gets worse. But
that's neat.
Yeah. So thinking about the collective and whatever, you want to share. So like, what would you say, or like, a rough estimate, like where are you sitting right now as far as, members kind of, total raised, to date, or a rough estimate?
So right now we've brought in around $500, and that's not counting, like I had to put $2,000 of my own dollars to go into the bank account so we don't get charged as a business bank account. And I've thrown some other money out there to do some other things. But we got almost $500. So, and that's going to be a reoccurring every month thing. Most of it was, we have some donations. If I had to say what's actually reoccurring, I'd say safe side is about 430 right now, and probably around 40 members. The tricky thing for me is like when an order happens for the second time for the $1 a week, it counts that as a new order and not the same order. So that's where it's harder to keep track of exactly who's a member or not. But definitely growing, 2 weeks out to be bringing in $500 a month in revenue for any business starting out successful. So hopefully it continues to grow.
Yeah, so this is probably my final question. So you talked about earlier about gaining trust when you start to sign these athletes and whatnot. What's the next step with that? So have you been able to talk to any athletes? You got any feelers there, or who might, you don't have to say a name or anything, but who might like want to join in and help the cause with that?
So I've talked to some like sports agencies. There's one ran by some Arkansas alumni and people with Arkansas ties. I'm not going to throw them out there, but we're probably going to get on a phone call soon, and hopefully they already have built up relationships with the 8 people representing players. I don't want to go to a player yet until I have the funds to actually offer it, right? I want to get to that dollar point before we start going and talking to the players, because I don't want to waste their time. Like their agent's probably like, hey, I got other people on the line, or like, I don't want to have to deal with that until we have the money to back it up. But I'm very cognizant of where the steps have to go to get to that point.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. So, that's exciting stuff going on. Love to see it. It's nice to seeing somebody, like we said, we see all these other fan-led collectives, and, we talk about, how bad Edge was. And, it's just great to see, like you said, somebody like yourself from Arkansas, that diehard fandom, finally kind of just step up and say, all right, if they can do it, why can't we? We are the premier Arkansas program in Arkansas, and that's fantastic. So, we'll kind of wrap this up with, looking into this weekend, what are your initial thoughts on the game and Petrino's first return to Razorback Stadium as the head coach, interim tag now, of course, but what will that be like? A little bit surreal seeing him on the sidelines as quote unquote head coach in 10 years.
So I have my thoughts on how Arkansas should go about hiring a new coach. I don't know if y'all want to hear them, but I'll answer the question first, and then you can ask me after. I'm thinking it's going to be rainy. I know muzzleloading season is starting. My grandfather's not happy about the rain because it's going to keep him out of the woods. He's more concerned with hunting than, watching Arkansas play right now. And I feel like that's going to affect some fans coming out. I know it's Petrino's first time back, but you got to see him last weekend. I think the team's going to have to get a win to get the fans kind of back in the stadium. I mean, if you look out on SeatGeek, like ticket prices are going down. Everybody's listing them. I mean, I think if we're going to win a game at home, this would be the one I want to win. Like this one means something. I don't give a crap about beating Auburn. I don't give a crap about being Mississippi State. I got a cousin who's went to Texas A&M, and I don't want to have to go see him on Thanksgiving in November and him have that over me again. So I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, and I think we're going to be in it. And if he can change the things Pittman couldn't towards the end of the game with clock management, and we can fix these fumbles, I think we might have a chance.
Yeah, fair enough. And so, let's, talk about it. We got another question we'll get to in a minute, but yeah, what are your thoughts on, the whole coaching situation, what direction we should go? Your thoughts on that.
So, we're throwing out names. I've been added to some Discords that think they have the insider scoop. I'm not going to reveal any of that. I haven't really looked into it much because we're so far out from the actual hire. What I would do, because I think, you're going to have to take some risk as Arkansas if you want to get ahead of the bigger programs that have more money. Like, why don't we go offer one of the best NFL general managers $2 extra million on a salary to come over to Arkansas, and he fields a team and actually evaluates talent, has we're at $25 million for you to go get players. He goes and fills the roster, and then we get the best X's and O's coach possible and just kind of run it like an NFL franchise. That's just an idea that I've had, because I feel like, why are we still looking at college football how it was 5 years ago when it's something completely different? You look at Nick Saban, he got out of it. You look at Dabo Swinney, he's struggling. So clearly who we thought were good coaches aren't good coaches with NIL. It's too much to keep up with while also worrying about what's going on in the field. So if we just hired someone that's used to doing it, I think that could be successful.
Gotcha. And then you want to go over transplants question Caleb.
Yeah. So Transplant Texan asks, benefits of offering $1 a week membership.
So I can't offer a benefit for that because I'm only getting $52 a year from you, right? So if I give you, say, a hat, it costs us $20 to get the hat in. Well, now we're offsetting. So really the dollar a week is for everybody to feel like they're chipping in. Very low amount of money, not a big commitment, right? But at the $20 a week, when we do get bigger down the road, like I do want to offer stuff for that. If we got to do it, if people are like, hey, I need something for that $1 a week, we can add those people to the newsletter too. At the moment, whenever we get like a quarter down the road, I want to do a quarter financial check, show where all the money's going, what's going on, to at least everybody that's a $20 member. I could probably be talked into doing that for the dollar members too.
Yeah, so I think Transplant Texan clarifying here, benefits to the collective of offering $1 a week membership.
So the benefit to the collective is if we get 19,230 approximately, we're getting $1 million a year in revenue. The idea came from another fan to me to do the $1 a week because he's like, look, if we get X amount of people on Twitter, we have 287,000 followers on Twitter. I mean, Arkansas football does. If just half of that came in and it only takes about each 20,000 is $1 million, well, that's $18 million almost right there, $15 million. So it literally is simple. I don't think it's a big ask out of fans. Almost anyone can do it. And I feel like it could add up very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I agree. It's like if you look at it, realistic numbers, and you think about, the followers of the football program, just across the state as well. It's one of those things that can add up real fast.
Like just get one home game, even just one Bud Walton game. Everybody signs up coming into the game, and you're already at $1 million.
Right.
So
true. All right, man. That's I think that's all I've got for you too. It was really good to get to talk with you, get some answers. I know a lot of people are. You kind of hit the scene really quick. I mean, it's been like a couple of days, and like a lot of people talking about you. So, you've definitely done a good job advertising yourself. I'll give you that. But I'm glad to get in and talk with you and get some, some numbers and plan behind it all.
Yeah, I really appreciate for giving me the platform. I want to come and talk to all the fans all the time. I want to do rounds all the time if I could, right? Because I feel like these are the most passionate fans. We're the ones with the 9 to 5. This ain't our full-time job to talk about this stuff. We're doing it because of the heart. But again, I just want to tell y'all I really appreciate it and hope I can continue to build relationships with you.
Yeah, I appreciate the insight. Our loyal listener, Transplant Texan, clearly is known for not being a Yurchek fan. He said Hunter wanted fans to get $50 a month. Pigpen Collective is asking for $52 a year. So even you're starting out on the positive note with Transplant Texan here. So there you go. So
he's a big fan.
So with that, and we're getting ready to wrap up, do you have anything else for the fans before we let you go?
I would just say to go check out the website, go check us out on X, go check us out on Instagram. The more people that like, follow, and engage, the more feeds it shows up on, and the more we can get out there. Just continue to spread the word of mouth until every Razorback fan knows about it. We haven't done our job. So,
can you give them your X account and all that stuff so they can go find it?
Yeah, it's pig_pen_collective. I think that's if you type in Pigpen Collective, you're gonna find it. Even on Google, I've Googled it all the time just to see what's coming up. It's on there, but the website's www.pigpencollective.com.
Awesome. So Razorback fans, go check them out. Like you said, if you want to be a part of this and be part of something big, like Ole Miss has the Grove, let's make Pigpen Collective the next big thing that's going to actually help Arkansas sports. And, put Arkansas in a competitive spot. So, Peyton, we appreciate you joining the show. And who knows, we'll probably have you on again at some point, as well as, things continue to grow and things like that. So we appreciate it. Hopefully it's a good game this weekend. Like you said, closer than we think. That'd be fantastic. But until next time, thank you for coming on. Loved all the insight and, appreciate it, and go Hogs.
Go Hogs, WPS. Peace out.
All right, that was Peyton Dunn, the founder of Pigpen Collective. So Arkansas fans, go out there, check it out. You heard it from him here. It's like Austin said. I think listening to him, seeing what he's trying to do, great idea. Love it. It'll be nice to see something. And, like we talked about, a fan-led thing, trying to get somebody to get something like this started. He's on the right track. Got the support here from Hogs on the Hill. So fantastic stuff there. And so as we talk about it, game week this week, Bobby Petrino is back to the Hill. But that's not the only thing back to the Hill this weekend. This is the first time since 2013 this Arkansas-Texas A&M game will not be played in Jerry World. We're going back to home and home. Arkansas gets the pleasure of having the first game away from Jerry World, rightfully so, as in COVID. A&M got to have a home game, and Arkansas didn't in that span. So,
right.
We talked about it a little briefer earlier, but, your thoughts on, first game back in this series at a home and home location, Petrino being back, initial oversight of this game this weekend.
Yeah, I think even though it's at 2:30, I think it's a significant advantage from what Arkansas has played before. You always have to travel all the way down there to Dallas. What do you call it? College Station's always closer to Dallas, and you don't have all that hassle anymore. Plus, they finally, even though a lot of those kids, aren't on the team anymore. There's a few, and they probably, when we play them, blah, blah, blah. None of them have a clue what it's like to play at Arkansas. And here's the thing, that means Arkansas fans have to pack the stadium too. I know the last time they did that, they had a really good crowd versus Notre Dame, and it just didn't end up well. I mean, you got to think of this whole team as something different, because essentially it is. I mean, you got this new head coach who's starting to put in his own culture, and you can kind of see it. They fought. I don't really think they gave up at all. I mean, that third quarter last week didn't look good, but they came back and nearly put it away. I think if you're a fan, you got to think about, heading to this game, because I think it's going to make a difference if Arkansas shows out.
Yeah, I agree. And, the one thing that's going to be tough is, Peyton mentioned, the weather's not going to be great, not going to be ideal. Rain, storms in the chance, but maybe that holds off around game time. We'll have to see. But, thinking about it and, going over some of the things Petrino mentioned in his presser this week, they asked him after reviewing film from last week, anything specific jumps out. And he said, there's a lot of things out there. But one of the bigger things is a lot of errors on defense. It's not going to be a 1-2 week fix for defense, but, still too many errors in some of their fits there on defense, some of the support, run support, pass support, and some of those things. So, they're trying to get that cleaned up. Offensively on the ball, he said, of course, we know about all the fumbles, take care of the ball, and the protection that comes with that. So improving, the errors that were found on protection, they played hard. I mean, like you mentioned, we know that, we saw this team get down in that third quarter, but they fought their way back up, and it's like I said, nothing against Pittman at all. But, I think if he was still here in that instance, I don't know if this team necessarily finds that fight to come back. I think maybe some of this change in leadership, some of, the aggressiveness we've seen during the game on going for it on fourth down and being willing to, take some opportunities, really fired this team up a little bit. And you saw this team play it to 3 points. And so, I'm excited. And, they asked Petrino, mentioning, at home, does things change as far as, what are you going to do pregame routine, and game day stuff, the weekend going into the game? He says it does change things a little bit. He's doing a different schedule. We already know that he's changed up kind of the practice schedule, the way they do things. And so he said it'll be similar to what they did last year on the road, except for they don't have to get on an airplane and go fly. You go to your hotel that you're staying at the night before the game, but trying to keep a normal schedule. So, I mean, based on those things and what we're hearing Petrino saying, does that make you feel a little bit more confident? All right, this is week 2 of him fully in charge. Kind of week 3.5 or 2.5 if you want to count. You had the bye week where the transition happened, but going into week 2, do you think we'll see a little bit more, not effort, but more continuity, cleaner game from this team? With being 2 weeks under Petrino now instead of kind of 1.5 weeks.
I think there will be. One of the things that I don't remember if he talked about it in the what interview he talked about it in. I think it might have been in the radio show that happened last night. But he talked about how, being able to pay attention to those close details on defense. And he specifically talked about the safeties and how they need to have a better clue about which offensive player tips them off to whether with it being a run or a pass. Bobby Petrino said there's always one player on the team that tips you off to whether it's going to be a run or a pass, no matter what it is. And then they're trying their best to find that and identify that player. That way, whenever they see pass, they get into a pass set and they go back. But whenever they see run, they hit their fits and they go up there. And if you look at Tennessee and how they gashed Arkansas on the ground, a lot of that was because safeties and DBs were back in coverage, and to be fair, they're supposed to do that. But at the same time, you have to play chess, right? You have to try and find that extra edge. That way, whenever the linebackers and the front seven do fail, you are there. Like, you are the secondary option. That's why you call it the secondary for the run. So that's the attention to detail that I really like hearing. And I think that, one more week and that could make the difference. But here's the thing. Texas A&M is like, every one of their strength on defense is where Arkansas's strengths are. And Arkansas hasn't really had to, do anything with it. Arkansas's made their livelihood on making third downs. They don't win on first and second down. First, a little bit more than second, but I don't know what it is on second down. They don't win. And I don't have numbers to back me. That's just me watching the games. I could probably do a little bit of research and figure it out, but I don't think they win on second down. And having those third and longs, third and mid, that changes whenever you have a team that's really good on third down. And if Arkansas can't win on those first 2 downs, they're not going to be able to win on third down against a team that is good as Texas A&M, at least in that area. So I think, honestly, this more or less has to build on Arkansas's offense. Arkansas's offense has to get better this week, more than I think the Arkansas defense has to get better.
Right. And I like the word you used earlier. You said chess match. We saw last week it was Petrino versus Heupel, offense versus offense. Mm-hmm. This week it gets a little more intriguing. You've got Petrino, offensive kind of genius, if you will, guru, versus Mike Elko, defensive specialist, a guy that, as we know, was previously at A&M as defensive coordinator, leaves, goes to Duke, come back, but a defensive-minded guy. So, that's where I think it's going to get interesting this week is you see what Petrino's going to dial up on offense and how does Elko respond with his defense. the A&M so far this season has been great at making second half adjustments in the second half. And, we know they have a tough run defense. So I think looking at this week, Arkansas is really going to have to come with a really good game plan through the air to be successful. And, the tough part about that is if it's raining on Saturday, that's going to make throwing the ball 2-3 times as hard as what it would be as if it was a nice, clear, sunny day. And so, I think we still will attempt to run the ball, and, that's what you need to do. If you can establish it. A&M's been good so far this season, but we did see they had that shootout with Notre Dame. I mean, we know what happened when we played Notre Dame, but I think you got to put a little asterisk there because that's a little bit different. If you get this team that comes out with a fight that we saw last week, Mike Washington, on point, hitting the gaps, hitting the holes as they open up, Braylon Russell coming out, physicality, running over some guys. We might be able to run the ball a little bit, not saying it'll be great, but, I feel like the game plan is going to have to Talon and the receivers come out and have success here, but also, can Talon also have the success that we've seen him have this season by getting outside the pocket?
Yeah, I think you're going to have that. Like even with how good their rush defense is, you're going to have to have some sort of pass game, whether or not it's like manufactured, like short slants or bubble routes or heck even screens if they play a whole lot of start to play zone, if Arkansas can put them in the zone. I think that's where you're going to have it. I don't think you're going to have any of those big long plays at least in the passing game. No, heck, I say that, and then Taylor Green showed me up more than once on occasion. So that, and then there's a few people that I think are going to be key in this game. And I did a little bit of writing on it yesterday. Raylan Sharp against Tennessee was one of Arkansas's best first down getters. Out of his 7 receptions, 4 of them were for first downs, and 3 of them were on third down that converted to first down. I think him being that guy is going to be super crucial to Arkansas, because there's a lot of eyes on Omega Blake. There's a lot of eyes on, I think our tight ends are actually incredibly talented. We just don't use them enough. But then you have, Raylan Sharp, who's 5'9", who can, escape and not be seen. I think he's going to be crucial. And if he can keep his hands good, in this weather, Arkansas should be able to get those first downs pretty easy. Not pretty easy, but should be able to get those first downs.
100%. I agree with that. And, you mentioned the tight end, so it's going to be a little bit different going forward because we learned this week. So going forward, it's going to be Rohan Jones and Jaden Platt because Andreas Puska is out the remainder of the season for having surgery. So, now you see you're down to those 2 guys. You're going to need them to step up. We've seen flashes from both those guys. It seems like every other throw to Rohan Jones is a touchdown. And, Jaden Platt's one of those guys that he just comes out and makes these really contested, crucial catches at times during the game. So would love to see those guys step up like you mentioned. But, I also want to see what does, we know a little bit about Petrino. He was here last year, but the year before that, he was at A&M, had a hand in recruiting Marcel Reed. And so, with him knowing quarterbacks, being a quarterback guy, but also having that experience at A&M with Marcel Reed, do you think he'll be able to go to some of these defensive guys and kind of go over some tape and be like, all right, here's some tendencies, or here's maybe some things we can do to, play on weaknesses or, things that he does that, Petrino is a quarterbacks guy that had that kind of, for the most part, some type of relationship with him while he's at A&M. Do you think that's something that he can use to Arkansas's benefit?
I think he kind of already talked about it on the radio show yesterday. He was talking about what the defensive line needs to do to keep him in the pocket and keep pressure on him. And the big point of emphasis, which is something Arkansas has been not very good at this year, is making sure those defensive tackles push the pocket. Like, not necessarily get off blocks or anything in the passing game, but push it. Because how tall is Marcel Reed? He's like, I think he's under 6 foot, right? Reed. Let me check.
But yeah, I get what you're saying.
He's 6'1", so him being a short quarterback like that, because I think 6'1" is a little bit generous. Him being a short quarterback, getting those big uglies in front of him, a whole lot of humanity. But the other part of that is making sure that your defensive ends don't over pursue or over rush, because then that's going to create gaps, and he's going to be able to cut through between the tackle and the defensive end. So yeah, he's already giving them tips based on just this, the measurables, just how tall he is and how fast he is and what you need to do for that. Now, as personal, what do you call it? Like, wow, I completely blanked. Personal failings on him, I don't know. We'll see, because here's the thing: he recruited him out of high school, but he never had him in practice. Right. So I don't know if there's going to be any of that, but I think for sure, him knowing quarterbacks, he knows where those weaknesses are going to be.
Right, and I feel like if you look at it, there's a lot of similarities between Taylor Green and Marcel Reed. The most obvious one, they both wear 10. But then you start looking at their game, very similar type players. Of course, we know Taylor's much taller, 4 or 5 inches taller. But, both of them have the tendency to like to be run-first type of guys. I will say I think Taylor's a much better passer than what Marcel Reed is in terms of, just being an overall better passer from what we've seen. Marcel Reed can make the throws, but, sometimes it's not as accurate, not as on target, those types of things. They're both speedy, fast guys. So I think that'll probably help a little bit because, Petrino has to go against Taylor in practice, but then also you're like, all right, this is very familiar style of play from this quarterback. And so, I think that'll help as well. So that's some things to think about as you look at it, and it's going to be fun to watch this Saturday. Hopefully the weather stays off, but, you look at it, start of the week, the spread for the game started about 8 or so. We're down to 7.5 right now in favor of A&M. So just a little over a touchdown. We talked about it on Sunday. Petrino 3-0 against A&M when he was at Arkansas previously. Every coach after that 1-12 between 2011 and 2024. So, 13 games, you've won 1. So, I think this has the chance to be a fun day for Arkansas. Not to mention, it's going to be a rainy type game. So you're going to see probably, I feel like you would think ground and pound, but we'll see what kind of Bobby Petrino dials up. But also, is there a renewed sense of energy in the stadium? Even though it's bad weather, you get people showing up because they want to see Petrino back on the sideline again. And I think that's going to be a fun thing to watch.
Yeah, I do too. And the thing is, I know what Peyton was talking about, hunting season and all that. But at the same time, there's people that are going to be there because they're excited to see him, and people that are there hoping that it bursts into flames. Because there's a lot of people in the state that still don't like Bobby Petrino. So there's a multitude of reasons why people are going to show up to this game. So I expect it to be packed, even if it's a little rainy. And all that stuff too. I think it's just too much of a draw to not be.
Right, 100%. So you're looking at jumping over to the comments and looking at some of the questions there. Brady G 111 asks, will the game plan be ball control again? We kind of saw that against Tennessee, establishing run, being able to have long extended drives, drain the clock. And I would say, why not? I mean, especially in an environment like if it is wet and rainy, if you can establish a run and consistently be able to, first, second down, get 3, 4, 5 yards, and you have some third and shorts where, like you mentioned, you can have those quick slants that can quickly get you the first down. Then you go back to run the ball to, have that time of possession in your favor. I think that's the obvious choice there.
Yeah. Plus, whenever you run games like that, and I don't mean like harken back to like the Bielema era, but whenever you do that, you have the opportunity to do play action and hit those long, shot plays
Right.
too. So I think that, and to be honest, Arkansas has, I think they're number 2 in the nation with plays over 20 yards. So I don't like, I think running the ball is going to be good, but I think every once in a while they'll have some of those, or they'll try to get those long plays. I don't know if it'll happen because of the rain, but I think they've got to do that to keep the defense honest too. So, yeah, I think that's probably where the game plan is, even more so maybe because it's going to be a little bit rainy, likely. But I'm a little bit curious to see how the defense plays out too. Just because, I think Tennessee has a better offense than Texas A&M, but Joey Aguilar is not a guy who runs a lot. And I think, I got to pull that up now, but I think he ran quite a bit on Arkansas, did he not?
That sounds right. I mean, he did have some big gains, and he did have that instance where, he did get hurt. I mean, if you look at Marcel Reed, I mean, 102 out of 170 passes. So, decently accurate, 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions ratio. So, I mean, he is not afraid to sling it as well.
Right. So before Joey Aguilar played Arkansas, the most he had ever rushed for Tennessee was 34 yards against Syracuse. He went for 59 against Arkansas on 5 carries. So yeah, I'm a little bit worried that Marcel Reed's going to go out there and just kind of run all over Arkansas.
Well, and the one
see,
thing that's going to help Arkansas in terms of running, or the defense, is A&M will be without their starting running back Le'Veon Moss. As we know, he got injured last week against Florida, so they will be down to their second string running back Ruben Owens. So they've split carries, not nearly 50-50, about 60-40 on the season. Le'Veon Moss with 70 carries, Ruben Owens with 56. He has 56 carries for 327 yards with 1 touchdown. Moss had 6 touchdowns. So, and then you also got Amari Daniels as well that has carried it 27 times. A couple other guys, a guy that is EJ Smith, son of Emmitt Smith, as we know. But Ruben Owens, expect him to get a majority of the carries this week, as Le'Veon Moss is out.
Right, but and this goes back to the weather and whatnot, but right now A&M has the leading receiver in the SEC with Craver. Is it Mario Craver? Yeah, Mario Craver. Also short guy, 5'9", 165 pounds. So he's kind of like there with like the Cam Shanks and the Raylan Sharps, which is kind of crazy because they also have what's his name? The kid from
KC Conception from NC State.
Yeah, he's also like right there, 5'10". Well, it says 5'11", but he's a short guy. So they're having a lot of success with those short guys who kind of get out of the way, who are also speedy. And then Arkansas has this, big secondary who hasn't been exactly the fastest out there. I really just think this matchup is tough for Arkansas. Yeah. So if the weather happens to hurt the passing game for anybody, I feel like it's going to hurt Texas A&M much more than it's going to hurt Arkansas, because you're going to take those 2 guys out of the equation when Arkansas still has a pretty decent running game with Braylon Russell, Mike Washington, and Taylor Green.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I don't know.
Yeah. And then, the next question Transplant Texan asks here, and I think this is what everybody wants to see, is can the Hogs finally have a better showing now that they're not at Jerry's World? As we know, historically, Arkansas and Jerry's World does not go well. Weird things happen. You think back to, you mentioned the Bielema days, the tripping play that Dan Skipper gets called for tripping that calls back a touchdown, just a few years ago. KJ Jefferson trying to Superman and gets the fumble, and we know what happened there. The goalpost not being the right goalpost, and Cam Little kicks the ball and hits the top of the upright, the very top. So, can Arkansas finally come back home, break this weird streak of, weird things happening in Jerry's world? And, I hope that's the case. But, I mean, also, trend over the past year or so, home games haven't been the best for Arkansas either.
Yeah, that's true too. Maybe this is the one that
Maybe they just offset each other.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe they would play better in College Station. I don't know, but I can't tell you, man. I think this was kind of a bad year for this game to come back, just because of all the craziness and how good Texas A&M is versus how lackluster Arkansas has been. At the same time, I don't know, man. I still believe Arkansas is one of the hardest. Like talking about the fans and everything is one of the hardest places to play because it really does get loud in that stadium. The reason why Arkansas doesn't have a good home record is because Arkansas has sucked at home. It's not because what the fans do. It's not because they take you out of the game or anything like that. I mean, Notre Dame did. They just annihilated them.
Right. It's just they don't seem to play well.
Right. I don't know what it is. That's so weird. Maybe with Bobby Petrino here, maybe that turns up. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Right, 100%. And I agree with Transplant Texans' comment here. Just looking for signs of improved and sustained discipline from the players. Having only one penalty last week is a nice trend. 100%. As far as discipline, the one thing I want to see is hold on to the ball. If you're Taylon Green, be aware when you're outside the pocket if you're being pursued by a defender. Tuck the ball. Don't let it get knocked out of your hands for a fumble. If you're these running backs, hold on to the ball as tight as you can. Braylon Russell's fumble last week, I can't 100% blame him because when you get hit like that and the helmet comes in contact with the ball, it's going to fly out. It's like I was watching the Ravens game a few weeks ago that was just on, as we've established. You're a Chargers fan, I'm a Dolphins fan, but I was watching the Ravens game.
Hey, wait a second. Wait, how did that game turn out again?
Yeah, we know you won.
Anyway, continue.
But they're talking about Derrick Henry and his approach after having fumble issues when the Ravens played the Chiefs. And, they were talking about the Raven Claw method of holding on to the ball, where you have, 3 different points of contact. And, I think, stress something like that to these guys. Like, make sure you have the ball tucked if you're running. If you're going, a halfback dive type play where you're just going to up the middle. 2 hands on the ball, have that thing tucked in. Just make sure you don't lose it. So, in terms of discipline, yes, let's see that type. We can't let this year be the season of the fumble, and we're halfway-ish through the year, and that's what it seems like it's been so far. Yeah, so let the second half of the season be that way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Arkansas has lost 3 games because of fumbles this year. They've only lost 4. So potentially Arkansas could be 5-1 right now. Sam Pittman would still be the coach, but Arkansas could be 5-1. But the fumbles have done it. And I really, you can't even blame it on, I think it was Transplant who talked about coaching decisions, or someone, I don't remember who it was, talking about, decisions in game and, execution on the field. Honestly, the offense at least has executed almost perfectly. It's just those fumbles. The coaching decisions for the vast majority of these games have been good decisions. I mean, you can talk about how they should have kicked the field goal in 4th and 4, even though Tennessee would have went down and kicked the field goal to win anyway. So, that being said, most of those decisions have been fine. They've been great, I think. not great, but very reasonable. And you haven't seen that in the past. It's just those freaking fumbles. That's it. That's all that Arkansas is missing, is being able to hold on to the ball, and win those games. That's it.
100% agree. It's like Brady G says here. I agree with him. It's pretty sad that you have to teach ball control to SEC players.
To be fair, some of those fumbles were nuts. Like,
yeah,
with Taylor Green getting caught from behind twice in the exact same fashion, that's just insane. And then, like he says, yeah, he got, first of all, that Tennessee player was probably 2 inches to the right or to the left from being a targeting penalty and probably hurting Russell really, really bad. Instead, he got his face mask right there on the ball and got it out. And I mean, like, kudos to him. But the thing is, that also happened with Mike Washington against Memphis. It was Memphis. Really, the only bad one was that one that Jaylen Brown had against Ole Miss. And you know what?
Mm-hmm.
That happens. Fumbles happen. But, of course, these guys need to be better with the ball whenever they are in those situations. But they have been really, really good plays by defenses. And they're all kind of free plays.
Yeah.
Same time, you got to not put yourself in the position that happens.
Right, exactly. So, yeah. So, I mean, a lot of things to see this weekend. And, if we can see the same fight out of this team that we did last week, I'm putting us in this game. I'm not going to come out and say we 100% win. I would love to see us win. And, kind of, break the losing trend against A&M. But also, it's back at home. Like you said, maybe there's a different vibe, attitude, feel, whatever it is with Petrino in charge now, and this team can actually play well at home for its fans. And so, kickoff 2:30 Saturday. Hopefully the rain stays away. Arkansas currently 7.5-point underdogs. We'll see how much that changes the closer we get to Saturday and how Vegas is feeling about that. So, get out there and, if you have tickets, let's support these guys. If it's rain or shine, let's be there for this first time back and see how it goes. Brady asked a question about the coaching search. We'll get into it. They're not a ton of updates right now, as we are a long way off, but he'd mentioned, are they interviewing potential candidates or coaches or waiting to see how Bobby does? And I think it's probably a little bit of both. You're not going to rule out not talking to guys, but also, they mentioned that, Bobby's going to get a fair shot at this. So it's like, it's almost things happening at the same time. Yeah, you're going to see how he does during the season. They said it's not going to be 100% on wins, but it's hard to say that. I think if he can win 4, he's got a pretty good shot at the job, but also, you're still going to be out there talking to guys. They mentioned using the coaching hire firm. That way it's a little bit more anonymous type. That way they can handle talking to these coaches, and you're not doing it yourself and, things like that. But I think it's a little bit of both. You're going to see them seeing and watching how this team does with Bobby, but also you're going to be talking to guys. Yeah, all these guys are in press conferences saying, "Oh, I'm not interested." But, you're not going to have a coach come out during the season and be like, "Oh, yeah, I'm listening out to offers and things like that." So, there may be gauging these candidates on how they feel.
Right. And so, like, interviews necessarily, no, they're not likely not having any interviews right now, which does put, like, in the sense that you think of as interviews,
Right.
Which kind of puts Bobby Petrino a leg up, because right now the season is his interview. It doesn't matter what they were going to go and talk about, behind closed doors. It doesn't matter if, Bobby Petrino doesn't, have success this season. But at the same time, they've got a lot of people interested in this job,
Right.
which is not what you could say 6 years ago. No one was interested in this job. Basically, it was like really crazy concessions that Arkansas would have to make to get anybody, and then you had like Barry Lenny Jr. And Sam Pittman, who wanted this job, and they chose Sam Pittman. So some of the names that are popping up are pretty insane if you think about it. I mean, obviously you've got like Dan Mullen, who I think, I come out and say I think that's the best choice. Then you have now recently James Franklin, which there hasn't been anything official to it. I just don't see Arkansas not pursuing it.
You got to at least make the call.
Right. You gotta. And then you got some of the smaller schools like John Summerall and Alex Golish, stuff like that have real interest, who done really well at their level, that want to come up and make that switch to the SEC. So Arkansas has got a lot of people wanting to come and coach here.
And I think it's fair to say, Penn State's probably the top job right now over Arkansas. But I think when you look at the two programs, you're looking for two different type of coaches. So I don't feel like there's going to be a lot of overlap between the coaching searches for Penn State and Arkansas, just because Penn State's going to be looking for a totally different type of coach than I feel like what Arkansas might be. But then also, you still got the rest of the season, and who knows what's going to happen. There's a lot of rumors flying around that after Saturday, Florida is going to be joining Arkansas in that coaching search.
Yeah, that's I'm actually surprised Billy Napier has made it this long, to be honest with you. But winning that game against Texas, I mean, that's
what I was going to say.
Buy you another week, so
right.
Heck, maybe now, he can buy another win.
Well, and now they're saying this week, win or lose, he's done. So
why not just get rid of him now?
Right.
Like,
who knows? But Transplant Texan does mention, he said, at least a head coach, Bobby P, is our fallback plan instead of a position coach. If the U of A does not get their target head coach hire, exactly. You hate to say it as a fallback, but yeah, to have a guy that's been here before, a head coach that sure maybe you don't get your top guy or something like that. You've got a guy like Bobby Petrino that has been there, done that type of situation, that can come in and take over there. And, Transplant Texan follows it up with, let us not forget, though, we still have an athletic director in place that failed to provide the needed support for our previous coach, so he had a chance of obtaining success.
Right. And I don't know if you saw this a couple of days ago that, Vegas makes odds on everything. And right now, the James Franklin's next job in the odds, the highest one is Arkansas. So that surprises me a little bit.
The real question is, after his buyout, does he want to go and coach right away? Part of it may be a stipulation that he has to look for a job.
Well, yeah. So he does have a duty to mitigate, right? Here's the thing with that, though. If he gets a job with a lower payout, they still have to pay the difference. So Arkansas, technically, they could go out there and get James Franklin cheap,
right?
And then have it subsidized, right? And then have it subsidized by Penn State, and then use the difference for NIL and have a bunch of
or
promises,
position coaches, and
right, all that stuff. So, I mean, honestly, if he wants to come back, there's that chance. But here's the thing. It's all hypothetical because Arkansas hasn't done it yet. Right. Arkansas hasn't made those promises or carried out any kind of promises like that. So it's all hypothetical, and it's a risk for James Franklin. And whatever anybody else out there wants to say, he's a good enough coach to wait for that big offer. The thing is, Florida is right there. So I don't know. It'll be tough to get him, I think, but they have to go after him.
It goes back to what we said. A, you got to at least make the call, and B, if you're serious and you think he is your best option, you make him either say no or you hire him and don't let him get away. Like you said, he may be waiting for that big paycheck. But if he's your best option, what you want to go with, make it where he can't say no. I mean, you got to show you're serious about the football program.
Right. Yeah. So, exactly. I mean, that's what we've been talking about. Like, you have to put up the money or shut up. And the reason why I think Mullen would be a really good offer or a really good coach, not necessarily that he's going to be that next level, but he's the guy that can be that transition to the next level, like Eric Musselman was for Calipari.
Right.
I don't want to say it like this because he's not on the level at Calipari, but James Franklin is that kind of caliber. Like, I think whenever I think of James Franklin, I think of the top tier of coaches around.
I mean, he was in the college football playoff last year.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
So, yeah. So as we turn our attention to basketball, you had SEC Media Days this week. You have exhibition play next Friday. Just looking at it briefly, we can dive more into it on Sunday. But what was your takeaways from SEC Media Days? Anything that Cal said specifically, DJ, Trevin, anything specific that you hone in on that Cal or any of those guys had to say?
No, not anything specific because we've kind of heard most of it throughout the summer and whatnot. I did like how he kind of challenged Trevin Brazil, right there when they were talking
in front of everybody.
In front of everybody, he was there right next to him, challenging him. He's like, "Hey, he's a walking double-double, and he should have like 4 or 5 blocks a game." Like, that's the type of athlete and player he is. So I do like that. I like that challenge, and I also like that he believes that much in him too. Because to be fair, we all knew that Trevin Brazil was that type of player. Like, maybe not to walking double-double, 5 blocks here and there, but it's just cool to see it finally, come out after all these years of the struggles. And he is the one I'm rooting for the most, to be honest with you. I want to see him do very, very good. And I'm glad that he challenged him just like that. Right.
And, another part of that is to tie into that, as Calipari mentioned, I forgot the exact context of it, but he was talking about how he said essentially if your team doesn't have any post presence, then you're a fraud. So I feel like that's a little bit more fire too to not only Brazil, but you think Pringle and Ewan, that Cal's essentially calling you out saying, "Hey guys, I expect, some contributions from you guys. You're talented. Let's see what you can do. Because if not, I'm calling us and our own team, frauds, if you will."
Yeah, exactly. I like all of it. Because when you look at the guards that Arkansas has, I mean, there are maybe a handful of teams that have a better guard group, and I don't even know if that's true. They have really, really good guards. Those front court guys are the ones that haven't necessarily proved that elite type of play yet, but I think they have the potential.
Right. They've also shown those flashes. We saw Brazil into the season / tournament Brazil. That's what we're expecting all year this year. That's what Cal is expecting. We saw Ewan have flashes at Florida State. Pringle played on that Alabama team that made that deep run, played at South Carolina last year that had a decent season. So, these guys are very much capable. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do. And basketball season is, like I said, rapidly approaching. You got 2 exhibition games, and then, you open up the season in November against Southern. So, we're 2 weeks away from basketball season, and things around here are going to get a lot busier because we'll have basketball to talk about as well as football. And so as we get towards the end of the show, we can't end the show without doing our college football pick 'em. Austin's going to make up some ground here this week. Hobbs and I up towards the top. And so, they start us out with a real fun one this week as we dive into this week 8 pick 'em. LSU headed to Nashville to take on Vanderbilt. Both teams 5-1. LSU ranked number 10, Vanderbilt ranking 17th. LSU coming off that win against South Carolina 20-10. Vanderbilt coming off that loss 30-14 against Alabama. Spread for this game is 2.5 in favor of Vandy at home. Can Vandy bounce back from that loss and, kind of show what LSU really is made of?
Here's the thing. I think LSU isn't that good. Like, I think they've got, which is weird saying for a Brian Kelly team, LSU team anyway, they have a decent defense this year. Their offense is putrid. I do really like Vanderbilt. I picked them to win against Alabama. Now they've had a whole week to plan for LSU. Yeah, give me Vandy. I think they're probably gonna cover too.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game by far. I agree with you. LSU has not been great this year. Their offense has been terrible, like you said. Great defense for them this year, but offensively things have not been going well for them. That one loss being to Ole Miss, but it's going to be fun to see how Vanderbilt responds to the loss this week and bouncing back. But I picked Vanderbilt throughout the season, but I'm going to go with the Tigers to get the road win this week. We'll see. And maybe I'm wrong. We'll see what Vanderbilt's made of this week, and it's going to be fun to see.
Hey, just make me catch up. That's all
there you go.
I'm saying.
Our second game of the week, we jump over to the ACC as Georgia Tech is headed to Durham, North Carolina to take on the Duke Blue Devils. Georgia Tech 6-0, number 12 in the country. Duke 4-2. Both teams coming off wins. Georgia Tech beating Virginia Tech 35-20. Duke beating Cal 45-21 last week. Spread for this game 1.5 in favor of the home team, Duke. Close matchup. Georgia Tech surprised a lot of people this year. What are you thinking?
To be honest with you, I didn't even know Georgia Tech was number 12 in the nation. I picked, I think, Duke twice, and they've lost twice. So I'm not picking Duke. I'm going with Georgia Tech.
I was about to say, looking at how this season's been, I feel you. I picked Duke last week. They failed me. But looking at what Georgia Tech's been able to do this season, Haynes King, such a player, hard, tough, hard-nosed type of player out there. Give me Georgia Tech as well. And this week, the road team finding success. As we continue on here to the Big 12, we go. Arizona is headed to Houston to take on the Cougars. Arizona coming off that loss in double overtime to BYU 33-27. Houston coming off a win 39-17 over Oklahoma State. Spread for this game 1.5 in favor of the road team, Arizona. So 5-1, Houston, Arizona 4-2. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's weird to me. I'm picking Houston. I don't think Arizona is very good. I think Houston's decent. But yeah, I'm going with the Cougars on this one.
Yeah, with a game this close, the spread at a coin flip essentially, picking the road team to win is a little surprising there to see. But I'm going to go with the Cougars as well to win this one at home. As we stay in the Big 12, we jump over to Fort Worth, Texas, as Baylor is headed to take on TCU. Baylor 4-2, TCU 4-2. Baylor coming off that win 35-34 over Kansas State 2 weeks ago. Then TCU in a surprise loss to Kansas State last week, 41-28. So in the span of 3 weeks, both these teams played the same team with different results. The spread for this game, 2.5 in favor of TCU. A lot of small spreads this week, but what do you think?
Both of these teams have burnt me, so I don't really know. So I'm gonna go with Baylor because my gut feeling. Plus, they have that similar game between Kansas State and TCU kind of crap the bed. So I'm going to go with Baylor.
Yeah. It's interesting one to see, TCU is the home team, but they're both Texas schools, so really who is all, or is it fair to say home away one way or another? I'm the same way with you. Both these teams have burned me this season, but I'm gonna go in favor of the home team and take TCU in this one.
All right,
Getting all the opportunities this week, Austin.
Yeah, for real.
As we jump back over to the SEC, Oklahoma is headed to Columbia to take on South Carolina. A surprising loss last week for Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry as they lose 23-6 to Texas. South Carolina that lost 20-10 against LSU. John Mateer back last week from the injury, but did not look like himself. Spread for this game opens up for Oklahoma, the road team, by 5.5 this week.
Yeah, as much as they burnt me last week, I think that Red River rivalry is super weird, and the team that's supposed to win it never wins it. So I think it was just a fluke, to be honest with you. I'm gonna give me the Sooners because the Gamecocks suck. I've told you from the beginning of the season they weren't going to be good, and look at them, 3-3, almost right there with Arkansas.
Right. Yeah, and on top of that, we've talked about it. Overhyped Lenore Sellers. He, KJ Jefferson 2.0, if you will. So I'm in the same boat. I think Oklahoma bounces back this week and gets the win on the road at South Carolina. Staying in the SEC, we jump over to another big matchup in the SEC. 6-0. Ole Miss, number 5 in the country, is headed to Athens to take on the Georgia Bulldogs, ranked number 9, 5-1 on the season. Ole Miss coming off that narrow victory over Washington State 24-21. Georgia coming off that win 20-10 over Auburn. Spread for this game 7.5 in favor of Georgia at home.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna go Ole Miss on this one. I don't know what it might just be me being biased, but that whole timeout clapping thing with Kirby Smart kind of rubbed me the wrong way on him, and there was a whole lot of, I think probably Auburn should have won that game or got really close to winning the game. So, and Ole Miss has been solid. They were, I say solid. They nearly lost to Washington State. But I don't know. I just like Ole Miss's defense better than I like, or offense better than I like Georgia's.
Fair enough. I'm still going to take the Bulldogs this week. Athens is still a tough place to play regardless. That was a road game for Kirby Smart and these Bulldogs last week. We'll see what Ole Miss does, in this game. If you look at their schedule, they've had one road game all season at Kentucky, and that was a 30-23 win. So, they haven't been tested on the road. You have to go into an environment like Athens and take on Georgia. I think it's going to be a tough environment, and I'm going to say the Bulldogs get it done. As we jump over to our next matchup, we jump to the Sun Belt Conference as Old Dominion is headed to Harrisburg, Virginia to take on James Madison. Old Dominion 4-2, James Madison 5-1. Old Dominion coming off a 48-24 loss to Marshall. And then James Madison coming off the victory 24-14 over Louisiana Monroe. Spread for this game is set at 1.5 in favor of the James Madison Dukes.
Yeah, I'm going to go with James Madison, mostly because I don't know these teams and they have the better record. So I didn't look anything up on them. But, yeah, go Dukes.
Yeah, this one's going to be an interesting one. Sun Belt, like you said, we don't have a lot of Sun Belt teams that we deal with when we do this pick 'em. And I'm like you. I'm going to take James Madison, former school of Kurt Signetti. We'll hit on that in a minute. But, yeah, James Madison for the win on this one. As we jump over to the Big Ten, Penn State is headed to Iowa City, Iowa to take on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Penn State 3-3, now with an interim coach. Iowa Hawkeyes 4-2. Both these teams, Penn State coming off that loss against Northwestern in 3 straight. Iowa coming off a road victory over Wisconsin, 37-0. The week before, 2 weeks before that, played Indiana in a 20-15 match. Tough game. Iowa favored by 3.5 in this one. Are you taking Iowa or interim coach Penn State?
Interim coaches have done really well on their next game so far this season. I'm going to keep that trend going. I'm going to go Penn State gets the win.
All right. I'm going to go with Iowa in this one. Always a hard-nosed, tough defensive team, but here recently found ways to score and have an offense. So, Iowa gets it done. I don't know if Penn State can bounce back on the road in this one. We go back to the SEC. A lot of SEC games we're picking this week. Number 16, Missouri. That just sounds gross to say. Is headed to Jordan-Hare to take on the Auburn Tigers 3-3. Missouri coming off that loss 27-24 to Alabama. Auburn coming off that loss to Georgia 20-10. 1.5 in favor of the road team, Missouri. Do they go on the road and get it done at Auburn? Another team that is, could be, like we talked about with Florida, could be in the coaching search soon unless Hugh Freeze can turn things around.
Bro, I'll go one step further. I think Missouri goes in there, embarrasses them, and then Hugh Freeze is out in the employment line on Sunday. I think Missouri's really good. I don't think Auburn's very good at all. So yeah, I'm going with the Tigers. Well, Missouri Tigers.
I was about to say which one,
but one?
You're going with the misunderstood War Eagle Tiger, or not going with the team that can't
not
get
with the Bird Tiger.
Straight. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, as much as it pains to me, I'm going with the Missouri as well to bounce back from that loss against Alabama to get the win here, which could, like you said, potentially send Hugh Freeze to the unemployment office and add another school to the coaching search that will be this year. Final game is back in the Big 12. Number 23 Utah, 5-1, headed to Provo, Utah to take on the number 15 ranked 6-0 BYU Cougars. Both these teams coming off victories. Utah beating Arizona State 42-10. BYU beating Arizona on the road 33-27 in double overtime to remain undefeated. Spread starts out for this one 3.5 in favor of the road team Utah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go BYU. I mean, I guess it'd be 6:00 local time. That place gets nuts at night. I think BYU is probably a little bit pissed off about barely winning that game last week. Yeah, I'm gonna go with BYU on this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow suit there. BYU's been impressive in the Big 12, not only last year but this year. They've got something rolling there. Utah's also been as impressive. They're always a really tough school to play. Always has good defense. Not having to travel too far in this one, in-state game here, but it should be a fun one. I'm going to take BYU to stay undefeated this week as they get the win over Utah. That kind of wraps up our pick'ems this week. So we'll let you guys know Sunday how we fared. It's going to be another fun weekend of college football. Jeremiah jumps in and says, "Can we beat A&M?" I think we can. Will we? It's to be seen. Can this program come and play well at home is the real question. Can they play like they played on the road against Tennessee? We definitely will have ourselves in this game for sure.
Yeah, basically just that.
So with that, before we get out of here, anything else you have before we wrap up and get ready for the weekend?
No, man. I think that we covered just about everything.
Exactly. We'll dive more into a little bit of the basketball talk on Sunday. But, with that, don't forget to like and subscribe. Like Transplant Texan here says, like, subscribe, select all notifications. That way you never miss when we go live. You can, like, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. don't forget to go check out our social media pages as well, across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those things. And we're going to wrap up and get out of here. We'll see you guys on Sunday. Hopefully we have a fun game to talk about between Arkansas and A&M on Saturday. And so with that, from Austin, myself, we're going to get out of here. Everybody have a great Friday. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys on Sunday for your Razor Recap.